come read to me.
Who better to take words from a page and create worlds than actors?
When they come read to me, I love how like they can change their voices with the characters and they actually read it like they're part of the book.
There are 2,200 BookPaw volunteers reading to over 60,000 students in hospitals and classrooms and shelters all over the country.
Be a pal and give 20 for 20 today at sagfoundation.org.
Be a pal!
So that was kind of new. You weren't used to that one, weren't you? Kind of got you there, didn't I? One of the things we do here is called Book Pals. For those who don't know what Book Pals is a chance for you as actors to give back to kids like them and to read in classrooms. This is the week of the 20th anniversary for Book Pals. And so all our events are focusing on Book Pals, saying this is an event we want to make sure everyone knows about. And everyone to either participate, to give up your time to volunteer. You can go on the website to figure out how to email and become a volunteer. Or if you don't have time, maybe you can give some money. Our saying is $20 for 20 years, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be $5, it can be $10, it can be whatever you can be. Everyone's been in the website, right? Everyone's seen the website. Everyone's seen the new designed website. You know what I'm saying? On that, there's still the donate button. This week is all about BookPaw, so whatever you donate will go straight to them to make more kids like that excited and happy. So that is huge and important, and please get involved, whether that's donating or volunteering or however you can. A couple things with that. The forms, all those things are filled out. We do not function on your dues or your initiation fees. Let me repeat that. We do not function on your dues or initiation fees. We are all about being a nonprofit, which means we function on grants and donations. So those forms help us with grants and show that we are giving back and that we're working with the community. So please fill those out. A couple things, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. YouTube is a big one, youtube.com/SAG-Foundation, because you can watch all past events. And tonight, if you missed something, if you were like, I didn't get a chance to write that thing down, as soon as you get home, this event will be on YouTube for you to watch. So please share it, get the word out. There's so many people actors who still don't know about us, and we're trying to get the word out. So please help us with that. I'm excited for tonight. We have a great group of panelists. I'm going to introduce our moderator. She's an actress, comedian, writer. She's a lovely woman, and her name is Susan Isaacs. Give her a hand.
Hi, I'm Susan Isaacs, actor, writer, and Lutheran. And I'm really happy to be here. I feel like I'm on What's My Line? I'm a screenwriting and sketch comedy teacher. I teach at Pepperdine, at APU, and go Cougars. And I'm an alumna of the Groundlings Sunday Company. I have performed with people from Second City. I performed at UCB Theater, and I have a great appreciation for each one of the schools here tonight. What we're going to do, I'm going to have each gentleman introduce themselves, what school they come from, then we're going to get some basic questions about improv and sketch, and then they're each going to take some time to talk about their schools. So with that, take it away, David.
Thank you. Hi. My name is David Jahn. I'm representing the Groundlings Theater. It's been here for almost 40 years now, and I was a main company member there from 1995 to about 2002. Started studying in 19...
Hi, I'm George McAuliffe. I'm from the I.O. West Theater. I'm the training center director. I started off in Chicago, which I.O. did as well. Studied with the Annoyance Theater, taught writing at the Annoyance and I.O. Chicago. And I've been here for about a year, working on the training center at I.O.
My name is Johnny Meeks. I am from UCB LA. I'm the academic supervisor of our training center in LA. I started with the theater when they opened up in 2005, and I'm an actor and a writer.
Hi, I'm Doug Morency, and I'm representing the Second City today. I've been working with the Second City since 1993. I started off in Toronto, where I worked in every company you could possibly imagine, from understudying touring companies to touring companies. I spent 3 years on the main stage there and directed a couple of main stage shows. I've directed shows for the National Touring Company and the cruise ships that go around the Caribbean, bringing delight to people of the world. I moved to Los Angeles 3 years ago with my lovely wife, and I've been teaching on the faculty at Second City Hollywood for the last 3 years.
Hi, my name is Stroth, and I'm here representing the Stroth Workshop. Self-named because I'm that full of myself. I started improvising in 1987. I had the pleasure of working with the late Del Close for about 8 years. And I've been doing it a long time.
Excellent. Who would like to describe to our audience the difference between sketch and improv? Anyone?
I'll take a stab at it. Improv, very simply, is when a scene is made up on the spot based on a suggestion, generally from an audience member, so there's no writing involved at all. You're writing it on the spot. And then sketches are written sketches. Anyway, the way we do it at the Groundlings, that's the way it is. So they're written, sometimes based from an improv and based on something that's been developed in an improv. But the biggest difference, improv is made up on the spot, and then sketches are written, rehearsed sketches.
The rest of you all are kind of came out of the committee and Second City are all kind of versions of that. And could you explain to the audience about long form and some of the different long forms that have developed over time?
I'll take a shot at that. Modern, what I consider like, there's long form in a way began with comedy sports or with the Spolin games. And as it evolved after the Spolin games, and some people might argue this, but as far as I'm concerned, Del Close had the idea of putting long-form improvisation on stage, meaning get a single suggestion, go for an hour, like 6 or 8 people, just make up an entire piece for an hour, and that became really interesting. In the evolution of the theaters, comedy sports or short form became very successful, and improv was sort of behind it on its heels and growing. I mean, long form was behind it on its heels and growing. When I started studying long form in Chicago, there were basically, a couple places in the world that you could study long form improvisation, and now you can't go to a major city in the world without being able to study long form improvisation. So it's grown quite a bit.
Doug, what are some of the different long forms that they do at Second City?
There are a whole host of them, from the very basic Herald, which is one of the original forms, to long form. There are all kinds of different structures. Some are based on discussions that people will have, in a living room setting or whatever setting you want to have. Discussions that the actors themselves have with each other about issues of the day, if you will. And from that discussion, scenes will pop out to explore those issues more deeply. There are tons of them. All of them utilize all kinds of different devices, whether it be time jumps or character swaps, or, I know everybody has a different lexicon when they talk about improv. But basically, long forms, in whatever structure you use, allow us to explore different ideas and themes from a multitude of perspectives, if you will, which help us to find different, unique comic angles in on things.
And that is, again, this is improv, so they get a suggestion from the audience, and then, as you said, the living room. Then the group of actors, they're like in the living room talking, and then everything springs from that initial conversation. Great. Well, I'd like to go down, as I said, go down the row and talk about your school. And some of the questions I had for you, for each one that you might want to think about is, what's the foundation of your school? What do you think the main emphasis is, or how it started? How does your school approach sketch and improv? Are they integrated, or are they separate tracks? And how do the classes progress over time? So if you don't remember all those questions, I will prompt you.
Please do. At the Groundlings, the improv emphasis is short form. And short form is basically taking a suggestion like the living room, and then the scene's only going to last 3 or 4 minutes. So, and we try to have a beginning, middle, and end. And the Groundlings is very character focused, which is why a lot of our people end up on Saturday Night Live, because we do a lot of character work there. So we try to let the characters and the it's sort of like scene study without a script in a way, because we want a beginning, middle, and end to a very short little scene, and we want it to come from the point of view of the character. The way the school is structured, we actually have a workshop A and a workshop B, which you do not have to audition for. So that's for actors who just want to kind of check it out, see what it's about. Also for people from business that want to check it out. And then what we call the track, if you will. There's basic. You have to audition to get into the program at the Groundlings. It's basically to weed out potential axe murderers. And we're not always successful. So the basic level is basic improv, and then intermediate is so the basic, just getting the basics of improv, then taking that to intermediate. That's where we start to really focus on characters, and that's the intermediate level. And then we just added what we call the advanced improv level, and that is to hone some of those character things that you've taken now and really work on them and put them into scenes and drive scenes from the point of view of a character. Then we go to the writing track, which is there's a writing lab, and then there's the advanced writing lab. That's all writing, tiny little bit of improv. Some of the scenes may be based from an improvised suggestion or suggestions from your director. And then there's what we call the Sunday company, and that's the farm team waiting to get into the main company. And that goes in 6-month increments. You get voted at the end of every 6 months as to whether you stay in that or you move up to the main company or you're asked to leave the building. And then I know
it's a really long audition.
It's a long, yeah. And then there's the Groundlings main company, and it takes anywhere to like between 4 and 5, 6 years to go through the entire thing if you're lucky. So it's a pretty intense program, and you can be asked to leave at any point along the way. Wow. Yeah. It's fun, huh?
So you go through beginning, intermediate, and advanced, and then go on to lab. Because when I was there, it was beginning, intermediate, lab, and advanced. So it's just you have that many people wanting to get in.
And you can take basic 3 times. You have to be moved up by your instructor each time. So you can take basic 3 times, intermediate 3 times, but then when it gets to advanced improv, the lab, advanced, it's 1 shot at each of them. And anywhere along the way, you can be asked to move on or leave the building.
What skills are the students picking up along the way? And what are some of the basic skills in terms, like you talked about character work. You want to talk a little bit about that character work or the improv skills?
Yeah, the improv is pretty much the same basic improv games that probably a lot of the other places do, particularly in the basic and intermediate level. You know, I think improv is this. You know, it's heightened communication skills. You're learning to listen much better, have much better eye contact. Also, take a lot of it off yourself and make it much more about the other person. That's why I think it's such a great skill to have, because it just immediately gets you to connect with the other person. That's why in commercial auditions, they love improvisers, because so many times they're like, well, we don't know, just make it up. Or create this, right? I mean, you've experienced that. So if you can, and we teach something called the who, what, where. Who are we? Where are we? And what's going on here? You know, so if you have some of those skills to back you up, you can really stand out. So there's that. And then the character stuff, you know, we try to create characters, what we call point of view. How does this person see the world, right? So you should be able to look at this character and kind of assume what kind of car they would drive. What are their political beliefs? Maybe are they religious? You know, so really come from a 3-dimensional, and it's very hard. It's very hard. Generally, in a writing lab, you write 5 or 6 monologues, and you end up performing. The final class is a performance, and you're lucky if you get 1, maybe 2 monologues that you write where the characters really are flushed out and work. So yeah, I would say the character thing is big there.
George, you want to tell us what the foundations of of IO are?
Absolutely. So IO was started by Del Close and Sharna Halpern, and it was kind of the idea that improv can stand on its own as its own performance, its own art form, and we can do shows that are from 25 minutes to over an hour that are going to keep people engaged and informed, and also you'll see these characters travel, see different facets of characters. So it's kind of taking improvisation and letting it speak for itself and be its own living thing. And it still is, and it's still, I feel like it's, if you look at it now, there's, thousands and thousands of improvisers, where Miles was talking about how in the 80s it was such a new idea to get improvisation to be, and there was this argument of like, is it something that's just used as a tool to create material, or is it its own art form? And I think, over time it's clear that I think that discussion's over a little bit because it's working on its own. So that's where our training center is there to take you through that process and really just engage in improvisation. So the first level, when we start off, it's an introduction. So it's more about getting, because I think when people want to take an improv class, they're so concerned, like, oh, I have to go up there and be hilarious and have all these jokes and be witty and come up with all these different ideas. And I think the first level is just kind of breaking that down to just, leave that alone. You're okay. You're fine on your own. Bring what you have and who you are and respond honestly, and you're going to see that that's where a lot of the humor is going to come from. It's not going to come from, when you're inventing, because that puts you in your head and you're just you're searching instead of being there present and connecting to your scene partner, as a group. So that's the first level, and we expose you to the Herald, which is the main form that we started and that we teach and perform on Tuesday and Wednesday nights still. And it's kind of like, in a way, it's a training wheels form for long-form improvisation. And we spend most of our program kind of revolves around the Herald in different capacities. The second level is going to be more characters, and now that you can ground them a little bit, and you can access your honesty and your ideas and your life and your experiences, then you can add characters to them and kind of filter those ideas through characters. So it's not as much like somebody who has like who's like a super big character is going to come in and smash you over the head with it. It's more like this is an honest character that's maybe not yourself, but it's a version of it's filtered through your experiences. The third level, it's within this last year we implemented this, and this is about you, because I think Los Angeles, we came from Chicago where it's a little less industry oriented. So here we're realizing people have all kinds of goals and things they're trying to accomplish, and we're trying to embrace that and incorporate it into our training. So it's about you seeing who you are and how we can fit this into IO's traditional training experience.
Is your improv and sketch integrated, or do you have separate tracks?
No, they're separate tracks. And I think what it is with our sketch program, we do have sketch classes, we have pilot writing, we have alternative comedy, which is like comedy for comedians, people who don't like watching According to Jim, but they like to bang on pots and pans and and throw stuff against the wall. So our idea though is like if you really integrate yourself into the improv experience, then you're going to have the tools that it takes to write, because when you're writing, you're improvising. You're taking on different characters. That's what the initial process is improvisation. So we want to get that first, and then you can see how easy that will translate into writing. That's why a lot of the cast members of SNL that come out of IO, they weren't necessarily trained for that kind of thing, but they had this training that they were able to generate material, and they were able to write, and it comes from a very honest place, so they were able to translate that and just kind of take it down to whatever show or whatever is being asked of them to do. They're able to do that. I'm going to keep going through the frame. So mostly after that, we get into the Herald, Advanced Herald, and then we explore different forms, because we're saying the Herald is where it started, and that was Del's original idea, but it's grown so much, and there's so many new ideas being integrated into long-form improvisation that by the end of it, we're trying to see what you guys can come up with, and you start creating your own forms, and those end up being things that are taught or tools that are used in improvisation as it continues to grow.
Well, thank you. Johnny, UCB.
Yes, UCB. UCB was founded by 4 people. Matt Besser, Matt Walsh, Ian Roberts, and thank you.
Amy Poehler.
Amy Poehler, thank you, and Amy Poehler.
Girls.
Yes. Yeah. Go girls. And they all studied with Del Close as well, and they have I guess we have a unifying approach to comedy, both improvised and sketch, which is the game of the scene. We could define the game of the scene as the thing that's funny about the scene. We could extend that to mean what is the pattern we're playing in the scene that plays to that idea. So we find something funny or unusual in an improvised or a written sketch, and then we would heighten that pattern. We would continue to ask ourselves, if that's true, then what else would be true? It's funny already. You see, it works. It works, everybody. We have
like
two tracks.
hypnosis.
We have two tracks as well. We have improv and sketch. But this idea of the game is explored in both of our tracks and all of our classes. So a lot of it refers back to this idea. Can be a very cerebral approach at first. We kind of put you in your head at first. And then the idea is to build that muscle to recognize game and apply that to your characters and as you move forward. We have 4 core classes, 1 through 4, that you can take. In level 4, you're doing the Herald. And we have 2 core sketch classes. After that, then we go into an advanced program if you're accepted or asked to leave. And then you're eligible to audition for a Herald team or a Mod team, which is a... I love this woman. I love this woman. Yes. And that would be one of our sketch teams. We also have beta teams that shoot video for our website, ucbcomedy.com. I'm trying to address all of those questions. I'm trying to recall all of them. One thing that we talked about was how does this help you as an actor? I think it's helped me tremendously. We talked about commercial auditions in particular, which is something I do every week. And there is a lot of expectation now that you can improvise in a commercial. And I think when I started to explore this idea of the game of the scene or brought it to my work, it makes it much simpler when they say, here's the scenario. And you can say in your mind, oh, this is the game. And then you can keep asking, if that's true, then what else would be true? If that's true, what else would be true? It sounds very simple. It is simple, but it's not easy to learn. It takes a while to rewire your brain like that.
Have any of you ever thought about asking for a writing credit on a commercial?
I've thought about it daily.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Doug, why don't you tell us about Second City?
Okay, so everything at Second City starts with improv. Second City started back in 1959, where there were a bunch of actors who were exploring the works of Viola Spolin and thinking, these aren't just for the classroom anymore, these are for performance. And what they used improv for back then, and we still do, is to create sketches, create comic reviews that can run for a certain period of time. In both Toronto and Chicago, we have resident main stagers who run shows 6 nights a week. National Touring Company performs on the 7th night. All of the shows that are performed there are written through improvisation. In Hollywood, we are starting to emulate that with certain premiere shows that we run on the weekends. But basically, when you come into the Second City Training Center, we have the first 3 levels that you're going to join are Improv 1, Improv 2, Improv 3. And basically, we teach you the fundamentals of improv. I like to think that improv is an extremely easy thing to do because we do it every day. But we, as individual performers, find ways to complicate it and make it difficult. We do. We bring our own agendas. We try to be funny. We try to be the funniest guy in the class or the most profound guy in the class. But every one of us, well, maybe there's 1 or 2 of us who struggle with conversation, but most of us find conversation very easy, and that's what I try to do when I bring students into improv for the first time, is try to make it as easy as that. So what we do is we look at various different perspectives in on improvisation. There's some first very fundamental behaviors that help us when we improvise. Once we've got those down, we start to look at other things like point of view, personal perspective, environment, how emotions help us. And we look at that through all the first 3 levels. And the 3rd level culminates with a show. Your first public performance, performing improvised performance games in front of an audience. The 2nd level at the Second City is where we start to combine sketch and improv together, which we call the conservatory. And basically, we start to take a finer look at improvisation and the techniques used to improvise scenes, but with the goal of writing something, writing a review show based on improvised scenes. So at Second City, we will perform improv for a one-time only sort of let's have some funny make-em-ups, you know, and entertain an audience. But the other more important thing we do at Second City is that we try to improvise scenes that will have a shelf life of 6 to 8 months. Through a process of improvising and re-improvising a scene, we come up with a 3, 5, 12-minute sketch, what have you, that will be performed in a show night after night after night. And we want it to be as strong when it opens or when it closes as when it opens. So we start to look at the difference between what kinds of ideas sort of make that possible, make a sketch live over and over and over again when you're performing it 6, 8 times a week. We also have separate other sort of tracks you can take. We have writing programs at Second City where you can learn to write sketches. We also have sitcom writing classes. We have a musical theater, how to improvise a musical in different levels, and it's starting to turn into a conservatory program there. It was just launching. So you can, if anybody's ever seen opening night at I.O., it's that kind of thing where you can get in front of an audience and improvise a full musical. We teach you the techniques for that. Essentially, at the beginning, it's a separate improvised program, but as you get into the conservatory, sketch and improv start to become combined.
Can you explain what you mean about an improv living over 12 months? I mean, obviously, you're not starting to write it. You mean taking the same ideas and the same characters and bringing the same characters back?
Exactly.
Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yeah, we get a premise. Every scene at Second City starts with a premise. What's our comic idea, right? What's the game that we're going to take and play in front of an audience? If it hits in front of an audience, the director will say, okay, let's do that again tomorrow, right? After 5, 6, 7 times, depending on how long you have to rehearse them, you pretty well get a finished sketch, which you are going to now pretty well repeat verbatim every night. Because it's born in improv, there is always, it's never fully scripted. There's always room to play, right? When you improvise something, the audience kind of knows that it's being made up on the spot, and they give you, they kind of meet you halfway. But when you present to them a written sketch, they expect a little bit more. It's got to resound with them a little bit more. And that's what we start to try to look for in the conservatory is, what are these ideas that have a little bit more meat on them, that have a little bit more juice to them? One of the mandates of a Second City show is to be satiric, to take a look at the outside world and put your point of view, your perspective in it, make a comment on the world that's around us. And that's basically what we try to do with all of our reviews. So when you get into the conservatory, we really start to push that. What's your personal voice? What's your opinion on the world? And can we work that into our work, into our sketches?
Thank you. Miles Stroth of the Miles Stroth Experience.
Yes, the Miles Stroth Workshop was founded way back 5 years ago by the legendary me. Yeah, I started the workshop primarily because Jahn wasn't paying me enough at the I.O.
Me either. I might come over.
And so I started teaching my own workshop. I also like my stuff wasn't really jiving with the I.O. Teaching. What I teach, the reason I teach is because when I came through, I took a lot of classes where no one really told me why my scenes were bad. There was a lot of, I don't know, it's pretty good, 2 more. and you really didn't get a lot of great notes. But back then, there weren't really a lot of notes to give. It was still a pretty young art form. But over the years, I just studied the hell out of it and just kept thinking about it and breaking it down and making mistakes and coming up with my own lessons to make me better. So everything I teach is my own invention. Me personally, I teach a very sort of mathematical, formal understanding of an improvisational scene. My workshop is entirely scene work. It's funny, I think about the difference between like me and Mick Napier from The Annoyance in Chicago. He wrote a great book called Improvise, and his book was almost entirely about how to empower yourself, how to really empower yourself and go out there and own yourself. And there was one paragraph in it that's what happens if someone else starts first. And it said, well, just empower yourself anyway and go. Which, there's a lot of sense in that book, and that's a great book. I bring that up just because everything I teach is what do you do when someone else starts a scene? What do you do with what you hear? And to me, you can hear the scene in the first 5 to 10 seconds. I see it as all scenes can be seen as one of 4 basic scene types, which I can break down and explain in a formal way that gives you an understanding of them, so that after 5, 10 seconds in a scene, you know the type of scene you're in, you know your position in that scene, and you know where to focus your invention. It makes it much less impossible. That's my workshop. I also purposely hired people who disagree with me. I hired Emily Candini, who was an annoyance player out of Chicago, and she's pure annoyance style. And she will, do I have to watch my language up here?
I think they can bleep it out if they want to. So,
Okay.
Oh, it's live stream, sorry.
All right, I'll try and watch my language. I should have asked that earlier. I probably swore already. But she teaches the annoyance style, which I love. I studied the annoyance back when I started. It's a great thing to learn. It's freedom. It's empowerment. And players need that. The third, I only have 3 improv classes in the core improv program. The third one is a forms class, where instead of studying 1 form for 8 weeks, you learn 12 forms in 8 weeks. So you learn the basic ins and outs of those forms. Because I think what a player needs is some understanding, some freedom and empowerment, and basic familiarity with the forms, and then you're good to play. That's the improv half of the program. And there's no levels to it. You can take whichever one you want, whenever you want to take it. The writing half of the program is basically, it starts with Eric Moneypenny, and then to Heather Ann Campbell, and then to Sam Brown, who are all working, successful writers. Every group that has gotten through the 3rd level of that program has things on the internet, has things on YouTube. They just really teach you how to crank it out and get it up. And when they do shows, it's always, they have film sketches, which go straight to the internet. I think every one of those groups has been on Huffington Post. It really is just an amazing program. The results of it speak for themselves. Let's see. Anything else I want to say about me? I think that's my basic program.
A couple of things came up as you were talking. The first, what do you do when someone goes first? And also talking about people coming in and using their bag of funny tricks, and how do you break that down and get people to be honest? Because I think everyone who comes into this field has some level of comedic talent, but a lot of that is getting by, railroading everybody or using all your funny stuff. How do you work in breaking that down, allowing them to be not funny for a hot minute, and getting them to trust just being in the scene and finding the reality or the honesty in that? Anyone want to?
Sure. I think, it's a lot of it is looking at their scene partner, because I think sometimes you come in, you can see when people they're all over the place looking for the funny. And I think it's getting them to relax and take a breath and see what's going on between who you're performing with, because I think that's a huge issue when they come in. What was the first part of the question? Because I feel like I forgot.
Well, it was what Miles brought up about maybe he could.
Their bag of funny.
Well, talk about that, and then I want you to talk about what do you do when someone goes first. But finish your thought.
Sure. I think with the bag of, when people come in, when they have something prepared, you have a class of 20 people, and I think it speaks for itself when someone's reaching and they're stepping outside of the character's point of view to go for a joke or go for a laugh. So it's all about catching those moments and pointing them out, and just letting people realize that you don't have to be so inventive when it's all in the honest response. Listen, yes, and, which is kind of the foundation of I.O.
Let's talk about that. What do you do when someone goes first?
When someone else starts a scene, I listen to them. That's actually what I tell my students is I only have one rule that is virtually absolute. And I always say virtually because every rule can bend. But I listen to the person who starts the scene. I'm listening for their scene idea. I'm listening for what they want me to do. And they will tell me in the first 5 to 10 seconds as long as I just keep listening. What happens is people panic and they start adding things that they don't need to. They were taught to yes and, but to me, yes and is really just, it opens the door to finding the agreements in the scene. Because there are a lot of rules, like you're not supposed to argue in improvisation. But of course, sometimes you argue in improvisation and it works. It works because the scene moves forward. So the key is to get the scene to move forward. It's not to avoid the argument, it's to make sure the scene moves forward. So that rule can be broken. I teach that thinking is noise. You train, to me on stage, I'm playing. When I get on stage, it's just play. I just say, screw everything else. I'm just going to, whatever my instinct tells me to do, I'm just going to do it. Because I've done 25 years of training off stage, thinking about improv, training myself in my reaction. On stage, I just trust that reaction, and I succeed or fail. And that's part of the beauty of improv, is that it's the freedom to fail. You can get up there and screw it up, learn a lesson, come back next week, do it again. And that's going to happen forever. Forever. So one of the things I focus on is like thinking is noise, and we've all had the basic experience of, say you're meeting someone, and they're about to tell you your names, and they're telling you your name, and you're preparing to say your own name, and in doing so, and then you say your own name, hi, my name is Miles, and then you realize, oh, I didn't catch their name. You didn't catch their name because you were thinking about saying your own name, which is silly because you don't need to think about saying your own name, but just that little bit of thinking. Just that little bit of thinking prevented you from hearing what they were saying to you. Thinking is noise on stage. So you don't think. I don't think on stage. I react on stage. I trust my reaction, I play my reaction, and I train my reaction off stage.
Thank you, Max. Doug, can you talk about, like, if you, to this group of actors, what would you tell them, like, if you had a direction, say, going toward sketch or going toward improv, are there any generalizations about the type of actor and what you would direct them towards?
Well, I think that everybody who wants to be an actor should do some improv. And not just because it looks good on your resume. Your manager says you need this credit from this school. And that is that's the worst reason to do it. But I think improv teaches you things about yourself as a performer because you are going to confront all those little blocks that stop you from succeeding. You confront somewhere in an improv scene. One thing that actors and improvisers have in common is the moment. We just come at it from different sides. Actors know the words that they're trying to make real in the moment, and improvisers are looking for words and actions that make the moment, that seem real in the moment. We just work at it from the different sides. And that's one of the things, the listening that goes that's involved with improvising is so, I was going to say handy, but that's like an understatement, as an actor as well. So many of us just look at our lines, wait for our partner to finish speaking, and then we heard our cue and we start talking. And we don't actually hear what's going on. And what we want to do is just hear everything that's happening and see everything that's happening, because then we are giving ourselves nothing but offers and gifts to react with. So anybody who wants to be an actor, I think, needs to take some improvising classes and improvise as much as they can. I think, for those people, for me, this is just my opinion, if you're looking to build some exposure, if you want to be a comedy writer, then I think writing and performing sketch is a great thing to do, because it not only gets your work out there, whether it be in clubs and bars around town or up on YouTube or wherever it is all over the internet. Putting your work up there is just a great calling card and a great way to build exposure. So I think from my point of view, if you're looking to be a writer or just want to improve your exposure in the market, then sketch is a good way to do it.
Johnny, I know that there's a lot of stuff going on at UCB. I did some spoken word stuff with Matt Price there, and you have a lot of other things going on. Are there any particular programs other than the sketch and the improv you wanted to talk about that's going on at UCB right now?
Well, we do have a storytelling class taught by Margot Lightman, and we have guests come in occasionally to work on something specific that we don't offer in our curriculum. But on an ongoing basis, we're working on these 4 improv classes and these 2 sketch classes at all times. But we have all kinds of shows, as you know. We have shows that start sometimes at 6 and go till midnight. We have a kind of an open door approach to this kind of work. We don't think of it as one company, but as many teams appearing on our stage.
David, I know when we were in the Groundlings, it was just short form, and I love the character and the point of view work, but the Groundlings has also evolved, and now they're doing, like, I think it's Crazy Uncle Joe, and Melanie started Cooking with Gas. Is there anything else at the Groundlings that you wanted to mention that we may have not covered yet?
Yeah, they've there's a lot of individual shows now that some of the Groundlings have created themselves. There's the Crazy Uncle Joe show is a long-form improv show, and again, we're known for short form, but it's a long-form show on Wednesday nights. Cooking with Gas is a short form for the first half, and then after the intermission, they actually then do a long-form scene for about 20 minutes. There's a great show called Mitch and Edie Making Love, which is Mitch Silpa and Edie Patterson, and they go out there for 45 minutes, just the 2 of them. And they're directed a little bit throughout it, but amazing to watch.
Improv or?
It's improvised. Yeah, totally improvised. And then there's some storytelling going on as well. There's also a new one where people do stand-up, and they do stand-up based on a character that's given to them by the audience, which is really, that makes me want to, I can't do it. A little scary. It just scares me. And I did not mention that Gary Austin is who founded the Groundlings back in 1974, I believe. So.
Thank you. Anyone have a last word before we go to questions, or anything you want to say?
One thing about the writing program, about improvisation, is getting up and actually performing it, not as you're learning, getting up there and going out and failing till you get good at it. And I think I want to say that about iOS is we have 3 spaces where we're putting people up, and when you're in classes, you can get up, put groups together, and get up on a stage and perform. And that's what we're implementing with our sketch program as well, because that's how you find a lot of it's so much timing related. And I think you got to get up there and feed off of a crowd in order to truly understand, what you're doing, how you're writing, and if it's working or not.
If I could just say one, so many great things have been said here. The listening thing, that's what I tell my students more than anything, listen. And we have to do that as actors too. People get so buried in scripts thinking that that's the most important thing, but you have to listen. And people say, yeah, but the casting director's not giving me anything. Well, that's not their job. Their job's not to act, but the words are there, right? We have to listen. And you're asking when somebody comes in with their bag of funny tricks, I get people just to sit down, and as somebody else said it too, just have a conversation. I get them just talking to each other. And what's interesting in improv, people want to go for laughs, but really my experience watching it almost anywhere, unless somebody's just really quick-witted and funny anyway, but 99% of the lines that get a laugh in an improvised scene, if you isolated those lines, they would not be funny. It's because the laugh comes from them being incredibly connected and really playing off each other.
Johnny, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar, actually. We were talking about what does this all mean for the actor, and as someone who was an actor before I got into long-form improv, I got notes constantly of, you're not listening in this scene, in a scripted scene. And I didn't really understand what that meant until I started to get into long-form improv. I mean, I feel much more invested as a listener now when I'm acting with a script. That's basically what I was going to say.
On listening again, listening, I say, it's a trainable skill. I know what it's like to hear anyone say, you've got to listen better. It's like, my ears are open, screw this guy. But listening is actually a trainable skill. You can hear more things. It's not just the words, it's how it's said, it's the context in which it's said. There's a lot of ways you can think about it. And I just wanted to add that in trying to grow my ginormous new company, we've added show nights, and we actually have shows running now on Tuesday and Wednesday nights at the Complex on Santa Monica Boulevard, and we'll be adding Thursday nights in July, and they're all free, and they're all different shows every night, different forums, different groups.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to go over some. Oh, yeah, no, go ahead. Please
I was just going to add just one other thing too.
No, we're moving on. Moving on.
Oh yeah.
Find an ending.
It was the most important thing, but. No, it's just like, you know, a lot of people talk about funny bags of tricks, and a lot of improvisers try to emulate other people they've seen be funny, and it always kind of falls flat. And I think one of the basic lessons that improv gives you is that you are very capable. And I agree, listening is a muscle that you can work. The more we connect to ourselves and the more comfortable we feel, the more we will be comfortable to listen when we'll stop trying to be so good. Right? And one of the things that we get to learn when we improvise is that I do have a good brain. I do get good ideas. And what I want to get used to is acting on my impulses and my ideas, not trying to do something with the moment, just legitimately reacting from myself. And as you said, it's just like things that aren't funny get huge laughs. You know, that's not a joke, but the audience is howling at it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the things that helps us, whether we're a writer, an actor, whatever, is that when we start to believe that we're good, we start to get good.
Well, isn't that the name of Charna and Dell's book, Truth in Comedy? You know, that's one of the biggest lessons to learn, is just to tell the truth and be invested in your point of view, and the humor will come out of that because it's a human experience. I have some questions. Oh, this is going to be fun. I always wonder where the black girls are on shows like SNL. Is it training or what? Even Latinas or Asians are unrepresented on shows. I asked to a group of white men.
But the white man you got to ask is Lorne, because I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
No answer. I love it. They're like.
The reason is because.
No, I mean, I think it's numbers, you know, and I think it is changing for sure. But I think it's like when you're at a theater and there are so many white people in the audience, it's how you relate to it, and it's cultural. So there might be laughing at things that are, you know, the people on stage are saying who are primarily white. And it's not that it's like one's funnier than the other. I think it's almost like this built-in system, you know. And I think it's changing. I think we're making points to change it, but yeah.
And Mad TV, I think, did great. You know,
Yeah.
that started off
And
as a
in Living
primarily
Color.
black show, and then it's a lot of diversity in that.
It's definitely changing. We just formed a Herald team out of auditions that's half women. We also have a diversity program that you're all welcome to apply for if you're not a straight white male under 35. Send me an email.
I came so close.
You see, a long time ago in this country, you know, black people were owned as slaves, and
Find an ending.
Eventually, they were freed, but there remained some resentment toward. How do we answer that question?
Well, you know what? I noticed one thing in improv, and I don't know whether it has to do with hormones like testosterone versus estrogen and women's brains. You know, we have more neural pathways. That instinct, the immediate instinct, men are much quicker. Where I would be like thinking about, you know, going back and forth. So some of it may have to do with just the way we're trained or biology, but men are given the permission to just jump on things, and I think women have to learn how to be badass.
Well,
as I like to say, okay, bitches get shit done, so go for it, girls. Just learn how to develop. Well, you're definitely going to edit that out, right? Okay, sorry. Learn how to access your instinct and give yourself permission to react.
And also, I think, and the girls I know that do make it are some of the baddest girls that, you're going to meet. But I think if you look at SNL and the girls that are just coming out of I.O. recently, I mean, that's who they're hiring from I.O. It was all girls. And if you look at the show, those are the people carrying the show in a lot of ways, is the women.
I was just going to say, stop watching that show. Just stop watching it.
I went intellectual properties. Do you copyright ideas of writing before you perform them? They're like, oh crap, I didn't do that.
I wish. I remember Chris Kattan and I wrote a sketch one time at the Groundlings, and it was on a TV show within a week. Pretty much verbatim. So no, you don't copyright it before you put it up on stage. In fact, we don't. I guess you could technically go to the Writers Guild and register, but we never spent the time to do that. I do it if I write a film, a short or something that I'm doing, but yeah, not with a sketch.
I also think when, I had that happen to me also, that it showed up somewhere, but I think you have to look at it like I can generate so many ideas that take it because I got another one. And I think when you're improvising and you're creating so much material and you're that strong, then if they take it, they take it because we'll have more.
Yeah, you're bigger than one idea, for sure.
I'm sorry, I'm like doing the worst thing. I'm not listening. I'm like reading a question.
What did he just say?
He said that yes.
Did you hear Miles?
I was a Toastmaster and I learned improv. I understand that this is different than being a Toastmaster. Toastmaster are speeches. So, yes, they're different. My question is, would I be able to build on what I learned or scrap that and start over?
I'm not familiar with how the learnings of a Toastmaster.
No.
Neither am I, but I think you can build on it. That would be my answer. Yeah. Definitely. You can definitely build on it. Why not?
Might be some screwed up lessons for Toastmasters, man.
Sorry, Toastmasters. Here's one written in red pen. This is different. And you kind of hit on this, Miles. Where do you draw the line with yes and, or might there be a story that comes to mind when you feel like yes and brought you somewhere too far? I.e., you kept saying yes and fell off a cliff.
Again, the yes and thing it's a wonderful rule, but it's a simple rule. It's the beginning rule, and for me, what it does is it points us toward the agreements in the scene, and the agreement is what we move forward. And in surrounding that agreement, we take appropriate position and create game. As far as like because yes and if you think about it, just like it's hot out, yes, and I brought lemonade, yes, and I made a pizza, yes, and I'm mowing the lawn. Yeah, you can pile a bunch of shit on stage, and eventually you'll have a pile of shit on stage. It doesn't mean you got a scene going on. So it really is just about don't argue so much, try and find agreement and move forward.
I would say that at some point you stop yes-anding too. When you found that point of view, or you found that interesting or specific or unusual or funny thing, the yes-anding portion of the scene is over. Now you're moving on to what we would say is, if that's true, then what else is true, in order to write the comedy of the scene. Yes and you could think of as just exposition. So I'd agree with Miles, you can exposition yourself to death in a scene, for sure.
And if you're not familiar with it, yes and basically just means, yes, I heard what you just said, and I'm going to add to that. As opposed to, yes, I heard what you just said, but I don't give a crap. Because I'm too scared and I can't build off of what you just said.
And I think the and doesn't mean just piling on detail. It means that you are always responsible for bringing something to the table. You're not just saying yes, because then things stay stagnant. You must always be proactive in moving a story forward. People don't like watching stories that go nowhere, and yes and makes the story go forward.
Johnny, can you talk a little bit more about what you mean, like if this is true, this also may be true? Is that part of the game? And can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that's crucial to playing the game so we can find the comedy element of the scene. When we're yes-anding, we're just agree on who we are, where we are, what we're doing. And then we find an unusual thing in that. Let's say it's a dad who tells his daughter's prom date that they can stay out as late as they want. And then we'd ask, well, if that's true, then what else would be true about that character or his point of view or behavior? So we continue to work on that. He might, if that's true, that his daughter can stay out all night, then he might give them a bottle of liquor, too, to have fun with. And if that's true, he might give them Hilton reward points to get a hotel room.
This show is intended for a mature audience. I probably should have said that.
And if that's true, then he might give them the Kama Sutra for that evening. And then we might edit there because we're going too far, right? We're making everybody...
Yeah, that's the end of the scene.
Maybe. It depends on what hour of the evening you're watching improv. But that's how we write the comedy. Once we find that game, we continue to ask that question. So we kind of leave behind, in the way we think about it, we leave behind yes and. That's just about setting up the facts of the scene. And then we find an unusual thing. Now we're into behavior and point of view and the interesting part of the scene.
Well, I think you guys bring up important thing about yes and is you have enough material, then you want to play a scene within all those truths rather than just keep piling on material, is then get into the scene. Because you can also do that. You can get stuck and not actually have a scene move forward. Okay. As a person who wants to cultivate comedic talent but doesn't necessarily want to be a comedian, how important is training versus instinct? And what are the good courses to keep skills sharp for the weekend funny person to take?
Wow.
Well, let's start with this. So they don't want to be a comedian. I'm assuming maybe you mean like a stand-up. But you have comedic talents. So how important is training versus instinct? I guess if you just want to, well, does anyone want to take over, answer that question?
Depends on your instinct, I guess. If you're funny, then you don't need any classes. Go be funny on the weekends. I mean, are they just asking how to be socially funny?
It must be the Toastmaster asking.
I mean, just like, if you're saying shit at parties and everyone's sort of avoiding you, then training's
then
real
take
important.
The class. Yes, clearly. Well, I think everyone in here is in Screen Actors Guild, so they're wondering how do you apply that to your work.
I think you got to surround yourself with funny people, and then you'll see, you know, because there's a lot of people who come in like, I'm the funniest person in my group, and then they realize their group isn't funny, so it's all these people that are just, you know, so you got to get in that room with people who are doing it and see what you got, you know.
And I think it's like anything too. It's like if you learn how to sing or if you learn how to dance, you have to learn some of the mechanics of it first, but then put your instinct on it so you are different. So, you know, if you're instinctually funny, that's great, you know, but a lot of times, like we've talked about earlier, people will come in and just be funny. They think they're being funny all the time, but it doesn't fit into really improvising. And I think there's a big difference between comedians and improvisers, too. Like the comedian, people will say, oh, you're an improviser, you're a comedian. You know, to me, comedian's more the stand-up comedian. It may just be semantics, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to agree with that point, that improv is a group craft where we're writing together. So if you want to be funny at parties, you got to get a joke book or something. This is about writing with somebody else. I always say I can't make you a funny person, but I can teach you how to improvise. Those are different things in my mind, you know. I can make you a more observant person and a better listener. That's a trainable skill. That's a muscle skill. But in terms of how funny you are, that's up to you. I can't control
If you ever hang out in an improv bar, you're likely not going to run into too many people that you wouldn't mind having a conversation with. Improvisers tend to all be good people because our tenets are listen, take care of the other person. I've never met a good improviser who I didn't mind having a conversation with.
But a bar at a stand-up comedy place can be very dark and lonely. Some like borderline personality disorder.
Very depressing, yeah. A lot of pain.
A lot of pain. A lot of pain. Del Close talked about having to perform the evening of the Del Close talked about having to perform the evening of the Challenger tragedy because it is precisely the night for comedy.
What performance story forced you to tip the scales for laughter in the face of tragedy? Anyone perform on September 11th?
I taught the next day, and I just told my students, I said, the best thing is to set that aside for now, for this 3.5 hours, and it's okay to laugh now in our work of what we're doing. I also had a show at the Groundlings, I think, the night that JFK Jr.'s plane went down. So, and we did have something in the show, plane related, obviously you take that out, and but I think it's compartmentalizing, for that period of time, and it's okay to laugh,
Because I think we're doing that in smaller cases. Almost every night there's somebody in the audience who's experiencing something in their life where they're trying to let go of, or they're trying to take a break from. So I think that's what we're doing every night, and it doesn't mean you have to, when the plane crashes, do a bunch of plane crash scenes. Because there's some people who have that, and there's like that blood bite element of it, and it's like, well, that's kind of, that's easy to do, and I'm not going to laugh at it, because I will. Like when Gilbert Gottfried's out there doing that the night of, but at the same time, it's not, I think it's always happening in one way or another.
To come full circle on that, I actually did a show the night Dell died.
Wow.
And did you bring out, no, his skull wasn't rendered yet, but...
Well, everyone knew, but it was, I think that's what he would have wanted.
Where is his skull now? Because does anyone know he had his head donated?
That's been debunked.
No.
He gave he wanted to will his skull to the Goodman Theater in Chicago. It winds up being a nice story. And I mean, he was a creepy dude. But I mean, he wanted to will his skull to the Goodman to play Yorick and Hamlet. And Sharna tried her best to get someone to cut his head off and hollow out his skull. But it turns out that's considered barbaric. So no one would do it. So Sharna found a skull and said it was Dell's and gave it to the Goodman, and it played Yorick. But it was later debunked that Dell's skull is in his urn on a shelf at the I.O. in Chicago, where his ashes are kept. But the Goodman, in the good spirit of the whole thing, said they were going to continue to say this is Del Close's skull, and it will continue playing Yorick.
It's actually my uncle's skull sitting out.
Is it?
Yeah. No. Somebody's uncle.
He yes-anded him. Did you see that?
Seamless.
Has anyone watched Slings and Arrows? The Canadian TV show, they worked that in with the guy who died. Oh, that went over.
It was a Jeopardy question.
I know. It totally was. Sorry, wrong answer for 100. Stupid trivia for 100. Okay. Is your school able to help with networking and job opportunities? And if so, how?
No. Actually, no.
Okay, so do you have formal nights, or is it just like casting people come? Does anyone have?
Well, when we're in the main company, the Groundlings, or the Sunday company, they have industry nights where people will come, but that's way down the line. There's huge value, I think, in just taking classes in any of these places, and you start to meet other actors with similar interests and other interests in town, and start to network that way. And because they'll know a group of people, that other person knows a group of people, and it's one of the easiest ways to start really networking throughout the city, I think.
Yeah, just keep hanging out with the funniest guy in the group, or the funniest girl in the group, and follow them on their coattails all the way. A lot of our classes get public performances. Some of the premier shows, there will be industry nights as well, but anytime you're doing a show, it makes sense for you to sort of let people that you want to meet know that you are doing those shows. So those public performances are opportunities for you to network.
Miles, you said you opened... Okay, penmanship. Oh, you said you open plus 25 years thinking. Somebody is on Twitter too much. Is there anything, I need a prepositional phrase here. Is there anything you regret about that? You said you open plus 20, what? What did you say about 25 years thinking?
I've spent 25 years thinking about improvisation.
Spent! It's an S! Okay, spent. Okay, thank you. You spent 25 years. What do you regret about that?
Well, my only no, it's actually a decent question and probably has a useful answer for you. I was sort of an improv kind of purist when I started. A lot of my friends went on to do SNL and other shows, and I'm like, no, I'm going to improvise. I'm a purist. And they moved on to sketch and other things that actually gave you a career and made money. And I know a lot about improv, and I love how much I know, but I do also feel that I wasted a good 20 years where I should have also been writing. I should have also been writing down ideas. I should have just a huge trunk full of scripts and ideas. I just didn't bother to. So no matter what you're doing, you should also, I think, and I say that as sketch, you should also be writing. That doesn't mean you're not also an improviser or also an actor. It just means, well, you're also a writer then, too. So that's my only regret. And screw that person.
Here's another question. Are there any particular improv actors, new or old, you suggest we study?
Well, I had the opportunity of studying with Alan Arkin a number of years ago, probably 7 years ago. And he was in one of the very early casts at Second City. And he had a very simple approach for improvising, and he didn't actually see himself as an improviser. He saw himself as an actor who just didn't know his lines, basically. He was making up his lines. But he just recommended that you always have an intention, and you always have an emotional connection to that intention, and if you have those two things, you can make your way through any scene. As I watch him now in movies, I try to see if he's doing that, but I can't tell. But I mean, that's one guy who, if you have a chance to, and he loves the work so much, it's almost become a religion for him in the way that he lives his life. And so he's just a really positive influence. If you ever have a chance to grab a class with him, I would say do that.
I think there's a show called Quartet that's great on Thursdays at I.O., and you'll see Craig Kukowski, Stephanie Weir, Bob Dassey, Tammy Sager, and they're unbelievable improvisers. That's something you can go out and see now. Also, just going out and seeing, if you're in it, you got to be in it and seeing shows because there's new people coming along that maybe you'll see them on TV, maybe you won't, but they're great at improvising. So you just got to kind of have your finger on the pulse because there's a lot of them out there.
This is, let's see, all panelists. One, how long are programs, like how many weeks, I'm assuming? Are they part-time or full-time? What days of the week or night, and how much money? I think you would probably have to look at the websites for that rather than have everyone go down and give you that. So, do a little research, just go to each one and get some ideas. I know Groundlings are like anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks. Am I in the right ballpark? Okay. Well, this one's good. Comedy is messy. How do you know where to draw the line between a funny but honest mess and a pile of shit? That's what she wrote. Okay. In other words, is there a too far?
I think one thing on our don'ts list when we teach people to improvise at the Groundlings is don't go blue. Don't try to go to that blue place just for the sake of trying to be funny. What's interesting when people are learning, we let people, we tell people in class, look, anything is going to come out of people's mouth in here. And part of learning, I think, out of fear, it's really interesting how often people go to like crap humor or, my dad beats me all the time. It's like, so a lot of stuff comes out, I think anytime it just obviously, we tell people stay away from cancer, stay away from wife beating, stay away, all that stuff. And it sounds, it sounds obvious, but I've directed shows at the Groundlings where, okay, somebody in the audience, give me, what's up with these people? They have diarrhea. It's like, no, they don't. No. No, we're moving on.
And it's also lazy. It's lazy.
Yeah, it's lazy.
And it can all, and it's also, you got to think outside of yourself a lot of times, because this is this is a group thing. So it's not just about what your limits are and what your lines are, because I don't really have any, and I find that stuff funny. But you also have to understand you're performing with other people who do have different limits and different experiences that affect them, and audience members too. So you got to keep it all in mind. And when anything can work, and it can also fail. So you got to get it up there and see what happens.
Yeah, I think you can go too far, but that's all subjective. So it's really hard to say, don't do this material. And I think we are some of the last bastions of free speech in this world. So it's weird to me to start a class and say you can't cover this material. If you do something that the audience thinks is too far or don't like, you suffer the consequences of it. But I would never say to a student, don't go this way. I might say, if you go that way, you'll suffer consequences. But I won't say we have a rule about that, because this should be about free speech. We should be able to write the kind of sketches and improvise the kind of sketches that we want to.
Yeah, I don't think anything should be off the table or sacrosanct. As far as like Blue, like one of the things I learned from Del was that there's a significant relationship between comedy and the darker side of the human condition. And like I like to make the distinction of what's the difference between Blue, as far as like what's vulgar and what's wonderfully awful, right? Like the first thing I actually ever heard Del say in the first class I ever took from him, he was standing on stage waiting to talk to us, and we were waiting for him to talk, and just then, we were in the basement of a restaurant at the time, this really hot waitress from the restaurant walks behind us, and he's just watching her go behind us and then up the stairs, and then he turns to us when she's gone and says, well, she was pretty enough to kill. And I'm just like, that's wonderfully awful. I mean, because if you think about it, how many crude, how many crude things a person, I want to screw her. It's like, no, he said she was pretty enough to kill. I mean, he was joking. He was joking. But to me, like, that's wonderfully awful. Actually, to really make that point clear, I would have to say some horrific things right now, and I'm not going to. I don't think I should.
Well, if you went into detail and used a lot of profanity, it would have been over the edge. But allowing that little twist to get into your brain, where if you cover it up with profanity and dick jokes and boob, oh, I'm sorry, this is live stream. I keep forgetting that. I'm sorry. And then just litter it with Blue, then the humor of it gets lost. So I think that's a good. And I think one thing I learned is, like, sometimes you just find the line by crossing over it, and then you're like, okay, I don't need to go there next time.
And it's also depends on the audience you're in front of.
I also think that I agree. There's nothing is sacred. Nothing is absolutely off the table. But if you're going into the darker places or the more blue or whatever, you better have a good reason to take me there. If you're doing it just for shock value, don't do it. That's been done 1,000 times, and those people don't last. Andrew Dice Clay, right? But if you have a reason, you have something to say that's smart, then go down those dark roads.
We have 10 minutes left. Find an ending. How do your schools benefit actors who seek comedy training to use in films, sketch sitcoms, and character development? And how does your school's style of improv develop a comedic actor? I think we covered that, but is there anything additional that anyone has to say about how the training, I guess, how does the training translate into work in films and sitcoms? We have covered industry, and I think that was kind of. Anyone have any?
I think it just adds. I mean, it's all training is good. All training adds to you, and I think improv in its exploration, if nothing else, will give any actor more depth into their character, more depth into their reaction.
Yeah, we do more heightened characters at the Groundlings, but what I've learned is that, going into a very subtle film audition or a TV audition, that character training still helps me tremendously. It doesn't mean it has to be big, but it just gives me it helps me with a point of view.
Well, just to wrap up, why don't we just go down and the row and just say whatever you want to say to sign us off? I'm so glad we had this time. Whatever, no.
Together.
Just tonight. Okay, that's not a song improv. Okay, any parting glances?
No. No. In that very first question, at the very beginning of the night, I didn't really tell what I did there. So, and everybody was very. I've been teaching on and off for about 16 years there at the Groundlings, and I just want to say thank you all for coming out and being interested in this. It's and I highly recommend even just one improv class. It really. The reason I took it was because I had done 12 years of stage, and I felt kind of stiff as an actor, and it really loosened me up.
Yeah, just come try it out. You'll see if you check our website next week, we're going to have a free intro class, so you can come for free and take a class, and we'll give you $75 off if you want to sign up for the first level. So that's out there.
Continuing on this theme, when you're picking which one of these programs, go see shows, go figure out, go see all of these shows and see what do you like, what's appealing to you about it. You like the character work at the Groundlings. And let that inform the first class you want to take. But I would say you want to take all of these classes. They all have different approaches to this great work.
I think the one thing that improv can give you as an actor is just it exposes you to desperate situations over and over again, right? You live on the edge of desperation. Desperation makes you make choices. And the more often you face desperation and succeed, the more empowered you become as an actor. The more you start believing in your choices, the more you start believing in the talent that you have. And the real you starts to come out. So, yeah, no matter where you go, no matter what approach, I mean, we all basically speak the same language, maybe with a slight different dialect, each of us. But, I mean, improv is improv, and I think, the more you do it, the more your true artistic, creative self starts to come out.
Yes. Study everywhere. And then, when you're ready, I'll be waiting.
The Miles Stroth experience in 3D. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's been a great evening. Thank you.